Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So last week, the DOJ released over 3 million pages of information on Epstein as part of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. I don't think many people were ready for what was in those files. I know I wasn't. I'm still sick to my stomach if I think about it. So as I covered, though, in my Sunday night show, all these documents point to one giant theme, one conclusion that you can't escape once you see it. We are ruled by a pathocracy. It's a system described in this book, Political Ponerology by Lobachevsky. And what it means in plain English is that evil people, through evil methods, have managed to seize control over nearly every lever of power in our world. Banking, government, education, medicine, media, it goes on. Jeffrey Epstein was just a cog in that machine, a cog whose powerful tool was blackmail. And honestly, he was insanely good at a very simple task. Befriend the elites and the power brokers of our society, tempt them with money, drugs, with the sickest desires the human mind can possess, and then capture every moment of it. Video footage, text conversations, audio recordings, emails, evidence of them committing those acts or discussing committing those acts. And once he had that, he or whoever he was working for had full control over those individuals. I mean, it's a simple equation, and he was darn good at it. I'm even seeing people online saying, wow, why was he so casual in his emails? Why did he have all these emails that he was talking about all this stuff? And of course he was casual, because every single email, every text message, every communication got filed away in a little neat folder of leverage against that person. That was the whole point. But what these millions of documents show us is something much, much bigger than blackmail. Yes, they prove many of the things that we have long suspected, that wealthy and powerful individuals are actively participating in evil that goes beyond our worst nightmares. Cannibalism, child torture, pedophilia, ritual sacrifice, and more. So saying our world is run by satanic pedophiles is no longer a fringe conspiracy theory. It's now a documented fact. But what's even bigger about these files is that they reveal that Epstein wasn't just the blackmail guy. He was a power broker operating at the highest levels of our world. He helped establish the framework for how pandemics could be weaponized as massive financial engines. He was involved in the early stages of Bitcoin. He even used Bitcoin for bribery, which paints a troubling picture that perhaps Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency movement has been compromised since its inception as being used as a tool to engineer society. He was also deeply embedded in the transhumanist agenda, discussing human cloning. There's even conversations that suggest engineering of the gender and trans movement, which we've watched explode in recent years. He was involved in regime changes, like what happened in Ukraine in 2014. He was heavily connected to the Rothschild family. And there are discussions, their own words, about how they funded Hitler and helped him hide, which is strange. He even had conversations about what we would call MKUltra programs, about using torture to deliberately fracture the identities of young children as a pathway to unlocking what they called special abilities. And the list goes on. So my last show on Sunday focused heavily on the disturbing acts of violence, especially against children. But tonight we're taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture. We're peeling the veil back and staring directly at the powerful forces that actually shape our world. And I know this is frightening to even think about, but this moment of time is incredibly important for all of us because it's an opportunity. Maybe it's the biggest opportunity we've ever had to use this information to help more people around the world wake up and see the evil for what it truly is. As Lobachevsky made clear in his book, Political Ponerology, the single most powerful thing that we can do to fight back against this kind of evil is to help more people recognize it, to see how these people actually operate. And look, I know it's heartbreaking to watch this information come out and see nothing happen. No investigations, no arrests, no justice. But honestly, that's not even the most important point here. If a few politicians get thrown into jail or shipped off to Gitmo, it doesn't change the structure. The single most important outcome of all of this is that it wakes more people up. Because the evil's greatest strength has always been in its ability to operate in the shadows, to keep us distracted, unaware, to make people roll their eyes and think conspiracy theory whenever we hear terms like Pizzagate or satanic ritual abuse. But now we have the proof that we've been waiting for. Now, before we start, I will warn you that some of this information is deeply disturbing, so I'll do my best to walk you through the details of the documents without overwhelming your senses, but just be warned. It's dark and it's heavy. Now, before we jump in, just a quick reminder that if you're watching on Rumble, thank you for supporting a free speech platform. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you like. Make sure you leave a comment. Follow the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please come over to Rumble so I don't have to self-censor so I can still get to you on YouTube. Please, please, thank you. Also, every show that I do is done as a podcast as well as a video. So if you prefer to listen instead of watch, go to your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Search for Man in America. Look for the smiling guy with the beard. Hit that subscribe button on there. And if you want to really make my day over on Apple Podcasts, leave me a review on there. Honestly, it really, really helps me to reach more people. So if you're following on Apple Podcasts, or maybe you're not, if you want to stop in there and leave a little star review and write a message, that would be great because that helps me to reach more people on the podcast platforms. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this show now. Now, before we dive into the specific files and narratives we're going to be exploring, I want to give you a quick reminder that we are very, very soon launching the ARC community. So the ARC community, to put it very simply, is a private place for people like you and I to gather, support each other, to build relationships and friendships and seek advice. It's centered around more of a faith-based preparedness, being responsible but helping each other. But ultimately, it's about being able to connect with people that share your values. So it's going to be a private community. We're going to have forums and training and boards and everything from a kind of open chat to a prayer request forum. But what's really cool about it, though, is that we're also going to be building out local chapters. So you can find people that are in your area that share your same perspective on the world, even though your family and friends might roll their eyes when you talk about being prepared or being worried about the financial system crumbling or de-dollarization or food shortages or EMPs. The people you're going to meet in the ARC community are part of your tribe. They know the language. They're working on being more prepared together. And so if you want to join the community, it hasn't opened yet, but we have a waiting list. It's now up to a couple thousand people. I think we're up to 4,000 or 5,000 people on the waiting list. So if you want to join the community, or at least get on the waiting list so you can it's announced to you when you can actually access it, just go to buildtheark.com. So it's Build the Ark, it's ARK. The link is in the description below. Just put your name and your email in there, and we will let you know as soon as the doors open to this. I'm extremely excited about it, and I hope to see you there. All right, so jumping into today's show, I'm going to be going through a lot of information today. I've got screenshots and receipts for a lot of what I'll be covering. I may not be zooming in on every little email detail because I have to cover a lot. But what I want to focus on in today's show is looking at the global power structure and looking at how much influence Epstein actually had, whether it was advising world leaders, arranging major financial deals, working with scientists, pandemic planning. There's so much to go through here. So I'm just going to kind of go through it just step by step. My intention is to not try to tell you what to think about it. I just want to give you the information in a way that's easy to kind of break down and understand the overall narrative of Epstein, because he was so much more than just a blackmail kind of collector kind of guy. He was a power broker at the highest levels of our society, including, we're going to start with the fact that, so again, supposedly, now I guess I should say with everything I'm presenting, these are allegedly, right? These emails could be fabricated. We haven't validated a lot of this information. So take it all with a grain of salt. However, I think there's a lot of truth in this. So here we go. Allegedly, that Epstein lived in the Vatican for a period of time. Very strange. I mean, we know the Vatican's involved in some strange things, but here's an email talking about him and Epstein, and right here it says, talking about this conversation, he goes, he wants me to finish each column different. As when he was living with the Pope John Paul II in the Vatican. He looked at a variety of different columns captured in wars. He told me that every pope demanded to have a column from every conquered country. So there's a collection of different columns in the Vatican. So this is guys looking at maybe do some kind of decorating stuff or doing some work for Epstein. And I guess Epstein had shared with him about his time while living in the Vatican with Pope John Paul II. And if you know about the Vatican, the amount of power they wield, it kind of makes sense that that was an organization that he had some affiliation with. Now, this is a big one. This is from John at the Patriot Voice. This is pretty significant, right? So this is an email right here that John has kind of pulled the information out of for us to understand it. If you're looking at the global architecture, the power structures, this is very important. So he says, in this email, Epstein says, quote, Davos can replace the UN Cyber Crypto Genetics International Coordination, which is, John's saying here, which is more or less exactly what is happening with Trump, BlackRock, Elon Musk, Palantir, the technocracy, AI governance, transhumanism, and ultimately the rebranding of the New World Order into something more of a MAGA palatable operation, as I've been saying. Now, John's saying that is why Trump was a keynote speaker at the World Economic Forum this year and announced the Board of Peace, Gaza's smart city to rebuild project there. He says that they really did plan all this out in advance. Epstein was aware or even involved, and Trump had to be the perfect Trojan horse to get the job done. Could never be a Democrat. A bait and switch of the century. So what he's referring to is here basically what they're talking about. Well, a lot of us have been really focused on exposing the UN agenda and all these different things that are happening at the global level. In this email with Epstein, he's talking about how Davos can actually replace the UN, replace the kind of cyber cryptogenetics international coordination. He says, like my stint at the Trilateral, he says issues now need to deal with the distributed trust and internet fallout. I'm not sure what that means, but the person replying to that says exactly, we need a new global architecture. The World Economic Forum Davos is uniquely positioned, public, private. So make what you want of that, but that's seems like it's one of those kind of secret meetings and discussions that these elites will be having in these back rooms and these kind of dark dungeony type meeting rooms where they're hidden and there's like a bloody dagger on the table talking about their plans to control the world. So the fact that he's talking about kind of consolidating that power into the World Economic Forum and Davos is quite concerning. Now, it extends far beyond that. So this is information. Interesting how Epstein wanted to help Putin, quote, reinvent the financial system. So here he's going back and forth with this guy named Thorben Jaglin, not sure if I pronounced his name right, where he's basically going back and forth talking about how he wants to pitch this to Putin. He's saying, Jeffrey Epstein's email sent in 2010 or 2013 says, when the Sputnik was announced, the West was caught flat-footed. The same can now happen with Russia taking the lead in finance instead of competing with the West for nanotech, copying Silicon Valley, looking for startups, playing catch-up to Microsoft, Apple, and the like. Russia can get out in front of the leapfrog the global community by reinventing the financial system of the 21st century. So he's kind of pitching. I'm sure this had something to do with blockchain or crypto, but you can see this guy's working on saying, "Hey Jeffrey, all this is not easy for me to explain to Putin. You'll have to do it. My job is to get you a meeting with him." So I'm not sure if that meeting happened, but here's Jeffrey again saying that, hey, look, get me a couple of hours with Putin and I'll explain this. He says, you can tell him that you and I are close and that I advise Gates. This is confidential. I'd be happy to meet him, but for a minimum of 2 or 3 hours, not shorter. His Putin relationship continues here. This is getting into Putin, but also Zimbabwe and Robert Mugabe, I forget how to pronounce his name. Apologize to Mr. Robert. Anyway, this is also strange. Right here it says that Epstein, this is an FBI document saying that Epstein had a compound in New Mexico where he lured and video recorded underage women. He also had a private island. Epstein was President Vladimir Putin's wealth manager and provided the same service for the Zimbabwean president, Robert Mugabe. Epstein had some connection to blank from MIT Media Lab, but CHS was unsure of the details. Epstein had dirt on other people. The logs from his flights were made public at some point. Epstein had a mansion on the Upper West Side. Epstein made his money from charging his clients fees to hide their money offshore. Epstein knew former President Bill Clinton and was very close to current President Donald Trump. In the spring of 2015, Trump had just been to Epstein's property for lunch. Then it gets into some other information about hacking. But you can see, again, he wasn't just a blackmail agent. Now, according to this, maybe it's not true, but they're saying that he was Putin's wealth manager, which maybe part of what that was implying was that he was helping Putin offshore some of his money. It's hard to say, but it was obvious that this guy was at the center of some pretty major power. Here's another thing, right? Shocking Epstein files reveal that Epstein was doing business with Emmanuel Macron, in 2016 when he was France's economy minister. By 2018, emails show Macron allegedly asking Epstein for PR and governance advice after becoming president. So, again, this guy had ways of pulling strings and knowing information that you even have the president of France asking Epstein, not saying, hey, send me some little children, but actually asking him for PR and governance advice. This is wild. I agree. Now this one, we'll spend a little time on this thread. This is from Sayer G, great guy in the health freedom space. He released this this kind of thread in the last day or so, and it's already hit millions of views. This is really, really important because obviously, if we look back at what happened with COVID and the engineering of that entire pandemic, whatever you want to call it, that changed our life and the trajectory of our world for a lot of reasons, like permanently. But let's just kind of take a look at some of the things that Sayer G has put in here. He said that, okay, the DOJ just released thousands of pages on the Epstein files, and buried inside them may be one of the biggest bombshells no one's talking about. The blueprint for a 20-year financial architecture designed to turn pandemics into a profit center. Offshore jab funds, pandemic reinsurance triggers, donor-advised fund structures designed to profit under the cover of charity, simulation programs, career pipelines into pharma and the WEF, all built years before COVID, all running through Gates, JP Morgan, and Epstein. We now have the documents. Take a look at this. Okay, so here's one. Bombshell number one, offshore arm for jabs. And I'm saying jabs because I'm still on YouTube, and whenever I say the V word, they like to censor my videos and cancel them. So for all the people that are watching on YouTube, you're making me say things I don't want to say. I want to say the V word, but because you're on YouTube, I got to say jabs. They're still probably detecting it. Made this video get taken down anyway. Either way, we continue. So it says, in August 2011, Epstein emailed Mary Erdos, CEO of JP Morgan's $2 trillion asset management division, outlining a Gates-linked donor-advised fund. His instruction, he said, however, we should be ready with an offshore arm, especially for jabs. The CEO of JP Morgan Asset Management didn't flag compliance. She asked for answers before the 31st. She got them the same night from a convicted sex offender. Here's the actual email. Okay, bombshell number two, the quiet part out loud. The same month, the same email chain, Epstein writes to Staley and Erdos, who says, quote, the tension is making money from a charitable organization. Therefore, the money-making parts need to be arm's length. The architect of this structure, convicted of sex crimes against minors, is explicitly acknowledging that the vehicle was designed to generate profit under the legal cover of charity. Something strange is happening with the silver market right now, and most people have no idea. Pause for a second and think about this. Why is silver up nearly 200% in the past year? Bank of America's head of metals research just released a report saying that silver could hit $309 an ounce this year. That's Bank of America saying this. At the same time, the U.S. Mint has paused silver sales because prices are moving so fast they can't keep up. That doesn't happen in normal markets. What's going on is a global silver squeeze, with countries around the world scrambling to lock up physical silver while supply tightens. And at the same time, the old paper price rigging system, the LBMA and the COMEX, is starting to crack, which means the real value of silver and gold is beginning to emerge. Yes, silver is already at a historic high, but many experts believe this move is just getting started as the paper market breaks down and physical supply gets squeezed even further. Honestly, this could be a rare opportunity to build real generational wealth, but the window's closing. Right now, Noble Gold is still able to maintain a reliable supply of physical silver at fair prices while others are running dry. This isn't financial advice. Do your own research, but don't ignore what's happening. The window is closing. So take action today by visiting goldwithseth.com or calling 877-646-5347. Again, that's goldwithseth.com or 877-646-5347. They hide a lot of stuff within the idea of charity and philanthropy. Okay, bombshell number 3, pandemic as an investment category. So keep in mind, this is 3 years before COVID. So Boris Nikolic, Bill Gates' chief science and technology advisor, emails Epstein and Gates about donor-advised funds and writes, quote, "It might be a great path forward for some key areas such as energy, pandemic, etc. Pandemic listed like energy, a standing investment vertical, not an emergency, a portfolio strategy." Right, and you can see the email right there. "It might be a great path forward for some key areas such as energy, pandemic, etc. And these cuts could mobilize additional donors and funds." It says Bill has been working with a lot of various donors on his energy fund. I'm not sure if he explored DAF as an approach. So DAF meaning donor advised fund. Okay, continuing. Bombshell 4, the parametric trigger, January 2017. An iMessage thread from Epstein's phone. An associate lists career options and one stands out. John Swiss, regarding a reinsurance team developing health products, did one for pandemics, helped develop major parametric trigger. So a parametric trigger is a financial instrument that automatically pays out when a pandemic is declared. So it's developed by someone in Epstein's career placement network. 6 months later, the World Bank issued its first ever pandemic catastrophe bonds, structured by Swiss Re Reinsurance, with exactly these triggers. Coronavirus was listed a peril. This is wild. Okay, so back in 2017, they're talking about what they refer to as the parametric trigger, which are, as Sayer points out, is a financial instrument that automatically pays out when a pandemic is declared. It's almost like taking out a massive insurance policy on the Twin Towers, saying that, well, if they happen to get hit by a plane, we're going to have a massive, massive, massive payout. It's kind of the same thing for pandemics, saying that, okay, well, yeah, we're going to create this fund that you can invest in. And if there's a pandemic, like a coronavirus pandemic, for instance, it will trigger these parametric triggers, which means that you're going to make a lot of money. This is 2017. You can connect the dots on your own. Okay, continuing. Bombshell number 5, Gates requested Epstein in writing. So it says on August 8th, 2013, 5 years after Epstein's conviction, an agreement letter addressed to William H. Gates states that Gates, quote, specifically requested that Jeffrey Epstein personally serve as the representative of Boris Nikolic. Gates waives conflicts of interest, provides broad indemnification in writing. He had access to every law firm, every advisor, and every institution on earth. He chose a registered sex offender and put it on paper. There's the agreement. There's a lot of weird collusion happening. Okay? 7 out of 7. The question you weren't supposed to ask. Nobody builds a fire station after the fire. What these documents reveal is a fire station built beside a factory that stores accelerants owned by the same people who wrote the building code. Patents, simulations, reinsurance triggers, offshore vehicles, career pipelines, all operational before COVID-19. The question isn't whether they planned a pandemic. The question is, what structural safeguard existed to ensure they didn't profit from one? Okay, he's got a full investigation there on his Substack. So that is pretty damning narrative that Sarah's put together there. Now, continuing. Apparently, Epstein was working on making Alzheimer's and type 3 diabetes a weaponized germ to kill millions of people. They focused in the vagus nerve that can access the brain, and they may have done it. Major U.S. medical schools knew this and supported him. So here's a thread here, which I'm not going to go into the details of it, that basically that he was working on making a weaponized germ that would carry Alzheimer's and type 3 diabetes. And it would be focusing on the vagus nerve, which can access the brain. So again, make what you want of it. But again, this goes so far beyond, oh, this is a guy that had the airplane and the island with the children. This is so much bigger than that. Now, let's get into cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin. If you follow my show and you look at my perspective, I'm not a crypto guy. I'm really old school. For me, I like to be able to hold my wealth in my hand, right, in a way that I don't lose access to my silver if the grid goes down. But beyond that, I've never trusted it. I've never trusted the origins of Bitcoin. I've never trusted that these cryptocurrencies are actually safe and private. I think that the military, whether it is our own, say, DOD or NSA or CIA or Mossad, I think that a lot of these intelligence and military industrial complex groups and organizations, personally, I believe they have back doors to these things, which is why I've never trusted them as a form of kind of escaping the financial system. And here's some good proof of that. This is from Patrick Riley, who says, at the time this letter was written, so he's referring to this letter right here, which is written in 2015, the subject being a reply to the Digital Currency Initiative. Okay? As he explains it, at the time this letter was written, there were around 12,000 commits to Bitcoin's code. Today, there are 47,000 commits to Bitcoin's code. That means that 74.79% of the Bitcoin core development and code was committed after Jeffrey Epstein took over the de facto senior management role as benefactor. He may not have been Satoshi, but he was absolutely running the executive direction of Bitcoin on behalf of Mossad, as he points out in this post. What are the odds that there are back doors built into Bitcoin's code at this point? Probably about 100%. P.S. Ever wonder how the Bitcoin ransom for the 2021 Continental Pipeline hack was recovered by the FBI? I didn't. And so again, he goes into, I'm not going to go into detail of this, but there's a lot of information, and I could have done a whole show just on Bitcoin. There's a lot of information that shows that Epstein was very, very involved at the very early stages of the development of Bitcoin. Okay, so here's the forwarded message about that, saying that as Bitcoin and digital currencies have started to become an important trend, the Media Lab has launched an initiative in this space. I wrote a blog post on why I think blockchain and Bitcoin are like the internet. Okay, so continue down here. He's highlighting that, let's see, so Gavin, Vladimir, and Corey, an important contributing developer, were being paid out of a nonprofit organization called the Bitcoin Foundation. A few weeks ago, it blew up when one of the board members declared the foundation bankrupt. Okay, he says many organizations scrambled to step into the vacuum created by the foundation and take control of the developers. We moved quickly, talking to all the various stakeholders, and 3 developers decided to join the Media Lab. This is a big win for us. So you can see right here, he's highlighting the fact that one of the earlier organizations that was funding the earlier Bitcoin development, called the Bitcoin Foundation, blew up, which maybe they caused the blow up of that, right? He says one of the board members declared the foundation bankrupt, and then Epstein comes in with his Media Lab, and they buy it up, basically. They take control of the developers, as he highlights here, right? He says, we moved quickly, talking to all the various shareholders, and the 3 developers decided to join the Media Lab. This is a big win for us. Okay. Here is a little kind of overview from Aaron Day. someone who's got a perspective on this stuff that I really trust. It says that Epstein files reveal Bitcoin as deflection for a CBDC rollout. He's saying shut down the strategic reserve now. He says latest Epstein document releases expose his network's deep reach into Bitcoin's origins as a smokescreen for centralized control. Epstein funded MIT's digital currency initiative supporting Bitcoin core developers. He met Tether co-founder Brock Pierce on Bitcoin and Coinbase investments and discussed blockchain while buying BTC and ETH books. His connections influenced Blockstream and stabilized Bitcoin during governance battles. Howard Lutnick, who's also in these files that have been released, Trump's Commerce Secretary, and Cantor Fitzgerald, CEO holding Tether reserves, shows in files planning a 2012 Epstein Island visit with his family despite claiming ties ended earlier. Tether avoids full audits with only attestations, artificially pump Bitcoin prices through unchecked minting, and Lutnick controls the reserves. This creates a pathway for programmable dollars, the disguised CBDC rollout sold as stablecoin innovation. It says the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve holds seized Bitcoin on this compromised foundation with pushes for more via related bills. It distracts from the real goal, using Bitcoin to normalize tracking and control through stablecoins like Tether. Now he goes into it a little more, and this is just the tip of the iceberg in looking at Epstein's involvement in Bitcoin, which, again, makes me concerned and makes me glad that I'm not a Bitcoin guy. Not to mention there's other instances in here where you can see that there's emails talking about using Bitcoin as payment for paying off like a blackmail ransom. So it seems to be it's a very easy tool for these people to send massive amounts of money around the world in a way that is supposedly undetectable, untraceable. You never know. But looking at the origins of this and looking at the origins of Epstein and all the things that he was involved with, I don't want to be involved with anything Epstein was touching, like nothing. So continuing, right? This part here says, don't let the death of Nikolai Mushegan to go to waste. He tried warning everyone before he was found dead and drowned in a lake. I can't believe we're basically finding out who the elites are in real time. All this time, they were kept in the dark from us. So this is a post back from 2022 where this guy, Nikolai, who's a very pretty prominent cryptocurrency guy, I think he was quite wealthy, he put this post out and he was found dead, I think the next day, okay? He put this post out saying, CIA and Mossad and pedo elite are running some kind of sex trafficking entrapment blackmail ring out of Puerto Rico and Caribbean islands. They're going to frame me with a laptop planted by my ex-girlfriend who was a spy. They will torture me to death. So again, back in 2022, this guy was warning us that, as he's saying here, the CIA, Mossad, and the pedo elite were running these sex trafficking operations out of Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands, which we now know is absolutely true. Continuing, now we're getting into some other strange stuff, Stranger Things type stuff, I guess you could say. So if you've looked into MK Ultra program, if you've looked into Montauk Project, which was behind the idea for the Stranger Things, you can see that, and this is declassified, it's not some conspiracy, is that the government had lots of different programs basically built around the idea of finding special and gifted children and then turning them into spies, whether used for remote viewing or psychic type stuff. This is very, very well documented. Now, one of the ways that, again, you can look at the document yourself, they were able to bring forth these abilities in these children were through these MK Ultra type activities, which oftentimes included physical, sexual abuse, torture at a young age to fracture these children's mind, to get them to withdraw into these different kind of segments of their mind so they could actually put in other minds, right? This is getting MK Ultra fracturing, Project Monarch, if you want to look into this stuff. But basically, these are things that a lot of people said were just these wild conspiracy theories, but here we have this conversation talking about it, right? So let me go and just read this one particular email here. Okay. So it says, am in Paris and was about to write you when it popped up. She is a classic stage 3 in the model. Outlier who is intelligent, was traumatized when she was young via sexual abuse, and now gradually coming into her own and becoming self-realized. I can share our text interactions with her permission. She's starting to develop special abilities. This trip, we've found a lot of stories like this, though she is more on the extreme side given her biographical history, has been working with many such people with the model and good success. So it looks like they're talking about this woman who's specializing in this ability to bring forth these special abilities in children through some sort of model. This isn't just some random thing. She's defining that this person is, this is Gina Yu, who's writing this to Jeffrey Epstein, and define this woman, this girl, as being a classic stage 3 in the model. So this implies that there's some sort of system that they're using to create these children with special abilities, using sexual abuse and trauma when they're young. Again, this is stuff that, I've been covering for quite some time. For some people, this might be new information, but this is a dark hole that you may not want to go down into. But here we have it right in front of us. So not only was he working with MKUltra mind control and special ability type stuff, there's also evidence that he was involved in human cloning and designer babies, which was apparently helped by major American universities. It says the first photo is from an erased whiteboard with some disturbing statements. They also wanted to build a mind reader. What happens to the cloned humans? So I'm not going to go into the details of these documents, but I looked at them before the show, and yeah, they're talking about human cloning, about designing babies, altering DNA, and also getting a lot of funding from American universities. So this is this is the real deal. Like, this is some really creepy, strange stuff they were doing, but it fits in with the overall transhuman agenda and a lot of what we're seeing these people doing. Getting into the overall trans agenda. This is a tweet from Naomi Wolf, who says, maybe the most perverse email I've ever read. Is this real? So this is from Robert Trivers to Jeffrey Epstein, and the subject is trans. Now, I'm not going to read all the specific details because there's some gross stuff in here, but you can kind of figure out what's going on. This person says, so Robert says to Jeffrey, it's very simple. I will compare male to female with female to male. With greater molecular control over development, we are increasingly capable of producing novel phenotypes, more feminine men, by blocking testosterone receptors or castration, and at the same time increasing estrogen production, the one that blocks male features. The second encourages female features. More masculine women, heavy testosterone dosage, incredible external effects, heavily bearded men. You would never guess they had a female bone in their body. The first kind, male to female, is 4 times more frequent than female to male. The first is attractive. He is a woman with a unit, so that if your fantasy is to put your mouth on that unit, trying to make it PG here, otherwise you're completely heterosexual, it'd be much nicer if the rest of the organism is female and you get the best of both worlds. It says so many trans women are very attractive and easily make money, which in turn they assert promotes their prostitution since they have to pay hefty fees for injections every week. But they are sexually happy. Once you have reached manhood, even castration does not prevent the sensation of orgasm, maybe organism. He's contrasting the female to male versions. It's sick. Anyway, the final point here says, by the way, we are now pushing the intervention earlier. So you notice your 3-year-old son has trans tendencies, so now you intervene with hormones. I'd be frightened to do that, but who knows? Again, this is some sick stuff, sick people. But it goes into other higher levels of the control structure. What's strange is that if you're talking to your conspiracy theorist friends, or maybe you're talking to yourself about these things like I do sometimes, you oftentimes get into these names of these powerful families, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Rothschilds, even the Epsteins, which is a very kind of powerful family. And there's a lot of communication between Jeffrey Epstein and the Rothschild family, where he's openly admitting to working for them. He's discussing these $25 million payments on retainer for him to do his services, which, as much as you look at this and say, okay, well, Epstein was part of the CIA or part of the Mossad, maybe he was actually working directly at the level of, say, the Rothschilds, and he was working through the networks of Mossad, through the governments, whether it was Israel or the United States or whatever. So maybe that was actually the key. Maybe he was above all those governments, because if he was working, if he was one of the right-hand men of the Rothschilds dynasty, that places him in a whole other category. But what's weird, though, with this, if you look at the information coming out, so this is, next post here. In an email between Arian de Rothschild and Jeffrey Epstein, it claims that when Hitler was destitute in Vienna, he lived in a shelter that was funded by the Rothschilds and the Epsteins. Very, very strange. Okay, so here, this is an email going back and forth between Jeffrey Epstein and Arian de Rothschild, and saying that finds out it turns to be 100% true. Hitler was selling his clothes and artwork and living in a shelter funded by Jews, Epstein, Rothschild, and Gutmann. No conspiracy. The Epsteins were the Vienna bankers, bought their bank on the ring, hence still Palais Epstein. Where are you? I'm in bed with your cold, right? So and what a strange connection. And it makes sense. Like if you look at the wars and you look at how basically all wars are bankers' wars, are funding both sides, if you look at through that lens, this makes sense. But continuing, Arian de Rothschild, the French banker from the Rothschilds family, shared with Epstein that her family supported Hitler in mass destruction to gain more power, and also asked if he got her video, quote, with the girls. Okay, so here we hear a little email thread. Okay, so this is continuing, right? So we have the part I've just read where it says, first, turns out to be 100% true, Hitler was selling his clothes. Okay, now, Arian de Rothschild replies to that and says, I know it's true, but regularly used to say that the Rothschilds planned and supported Hitler in mass destruction to gain more power. Now, there's one for the history books. She says, I'm in the Maldives with a cold since yesterday. I've been diving a lot, 3 to 4 times a day, back in Europe the 3rd. Okay, then Epstein responds, I'll be there in 20 to 30 minutes. And then Arian replies and says, great, did you get my video with the girls? I don't even want to imagine what that video is. Okay, here's another interaction with Arian de Rothschild, or Ariana, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Mrs. Rothschild. Epstein tells her not to put any Africans on her advisory board and to prioritize Jews. Says not Africans, serious people, and preferable some Jews. Weird. This is an email from Jeffrey to her saying, goals. You should have money under your sole control, maybe a loan from the bank to a company that you own or control, if not outright. Resignation letter of B from boards for personal medical reasons or other government statutes, shareholders voting in your favor, then new guardians, revoke waiver of inheritance, maybe transfer control to a new trust for daughters. It should be in a limited partnership form. Operations of the bank regarding done. New advisory board, Summers, Ehud Pritzker, no diplomats, etc., not African. Serious people with a strong financial operations reputation, not charity, preferable some Jews. So again, this is Jeffrey Epstein, and what he appears to be doing is advising a Rothschild banker on how to manage her money and how to move it into different kind of corporations with loans. Just some very weird stuff here. So like, why is Epstein advising the Rothschilds on this stuff? I have no idea. And if you want to have one more final kind of hint, final punch in the gut that the whole system is rigged, here we have information talking about how Epstein just so happened to win an $85 million Powerball lottery ticket. Imagine that. So it says he went to jail June 30th of 2008, and the market is crashing. It says miraculously, his Zorro trust fund, Zorro is the ranch out in New Mexico, His Zorro Trust Fund wins the $85 million Powerball of July 2nd, which he cashed in August while in jail. Tell me we're not being ruled by hardcore criminals. This is something that was verified by Grok, who continues right here, says yes, that Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Trust won an $85 million Powerball jackpot, the lump sum of $29 million from a July 2nd, 2008 draw claimed in August, shortly after he began jail on July 30th, not the exact day. It makes you think maybe that was part of like the arrangement. It's like, okay, hey, Epstein, look, we're going to put you in jail for a little bit. It's going to inconvenience you, but you know what? We'll let you win the Powerball. Here's $30 million for you. Yeah. Rules for thee, not for me. Right. So that's all I'm going to be going over for today's show. I tried to pack as much as I could in there, but the point in looking at all this is understanding that when we're looking through these files, of course, there's some gross stuff. There's a lot of like, see, I told you so type information. But it's important to look at the big picture here, is that what we're seeing through Epstein, it's almost like forget about Epstein. Just imagine he's a fictional character. Maybe it's Mr. Bean or Bond. But what we're seeing through the lens of this character is that there is a very small club that you and I aren't in. And these people are doing everything from manipulating wars, funding both sides of wars, creating pandemics, profiting off of them, controlling most likely large amounts of money through cryptocurrency. The list goes on and on and on. Cloning, transhumanism, not to mention all the satanic and the evil stuff. So what these Epstein files do is they give us a verifiable look into the inner world of these power brokers and the Rothschilds and leaders of nations and powerful bankers. And you can see the mechanisms that they use to control our society. And this is why this information, as I said in the beginning, is a significant opportunity for us, because it is an opportunity for us to show the world the truth of what's happening, because these people can only maintain their control if enough of the world's people are ignorant to it. That's how they do it. They keep us distracted on iPhones, watching the NFL game or the Olympics. They keep us all distracted with the next celebrity gossip, the infighting in the conservative party, the left versus right. These are all distractions. These are all tools of social engineering to make sure that no one's focusing on what's happening at the top of the ladder, what's happening towards the peak of the pyramid. And this starts to unveil that for us. And so there's a silver lining in everything, right? Here's your silver lining. The silver lining with this is that this is an opportunity for us. And I hope that we could take advantage of it. I hope that we can not approach this with this "I told you so" attitude, but maybe it's the chance that we have, whether it's this video, whether it's a screenshot, that we can go to our friends and our family and coworkers and people that maybe had turned a blind eye to us because they thought we were crazy, and compassionately just say, look, Steve, I know that this was uncomfortable to talk about a couple of years ago and there wasn't a lot of evidence, but just have a look at this man. Like, watch a short video from Man in America. He goes over it. Look at these documents. Like, this is real, right? Let's acknowledge this is real, and then let's come together. Because I guarantee you that if every American in this country understood the points that we reviewed in this show and knew exactly how powerful these structures were to control the media, the narrative, the social media, big tech, etc., people would be uniting. We'd be uniting. We'd say, okay, who's the enemy? It's not your leftist neighbor or your conservative cousin. The enemy is a group of probably satanic elites that are abusing children and eating babies and drinking their blood and sacrificing and hiding bodies in various places and cloning. Those are the enemies of mankind. And they've been social engineering everything about our society so that we think that our neighbor's the enemy. So let's use this as an opportunity to come together as one nation, as one people around the world, and recognize the evil and collectively say we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to put up with it. We're going to keep exposing it. We're going to keep people from seeing the truth of it. Because for me, when you see all this evil, it makes me want to be even better. It makes me want to believe in God even more and strengthen my faith, because you can see it's a battle of good and evil. And that's In my view, that's how we fight it. All right, so that is the end of today's show. It wasn't as heavy as the show I did on Sunday. If you haven't watched that one, I do recommend you go watch that one as well. And just a final reminder to you to check out buildtheark.com. This is going to be a private place for us to get together, for us to support each other, because if you piece together all this information, you can see that the evil control structure is a death cult. They don't want us here. They want us to be subservient slaves. And the greatest tool that we have to resist that is building communities and building relationships that they cannot penetrate. That's our strength. It's our fellow man. So that's it. All the links are in the description I talked about for the community. So take care. God bless.